Good morning, karibu sana to Morning Cafe. A new week, a new day, a bright new way to take a look at your life. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. This is the Morning Cafe. The guys who wake you up the best way we know how to. How hot is a coffee where you are? Karibu sana. Absolutely,
and a lot is happening this morning and today. It is World Immunization Day. It is a World Orphans Day. A lot is happening. It is International Accounting Day. It is World Top-Up Day. Mambo mengi
yanafanyika. Top up like ile top up ya top up.
Hiyo. Wanasema supporting family back home can be tough, taking resilience, hard work and love to bridge the distance and provide for those who matter. Sasa unaambiwa at least tuma some black tax.
Yes, I'm talking about black tax because it is exactly 45 days to Christmas. Kama hujakuwa ukirusha maneno nyumbani, this is the time now to start. Only 45 days left to Christmas, 51 days left to the end of the year. Kama ulikuwa na New Year resolution, not even call it New Year. Kama ulikuwa na resolutions at 2025, 50 days to go. From tomorrow we're starting a 50-day countdown to the end of the year. Yes. For those who are sitting for KCSE exams, leo ni ile siku mathematics paper 2 this morning. Yes. And then when it gets to the afternoon wafanya fasihi. Kama huko unapenda hizo vitabu, leo utaitana Kiswahili fasihi. But I know those guys wamesoma kweli kweli. All the best to those sitting for KCSE. Let's take a look at the dailies this morning. Leo wanachoma kuchoma. And you'll realize there's one face that now features on most of the dailies. Hii sura iko hapa katikati. Anaitwa, nilisikia anaitwa Joel. And ndio inaitwa Yoweri is Joel.
M7.
Jina yake yote ina maana tofauti. Trinity of Terror, that's a big headline on the Standard.
Daily Nation, abductions, how Museveni caved in.
We move on to politics within our borders. Mimi tu ndo kusema mlimani, nani huyo? Rigathi Gachagua, gazeti la Taifa Leo.
People Daily, regional shifts ahead of 2027 race.
And I think this is one of the biggest discussions. Different leaders and how they're shaping up the politics in Kenya. That's a People Daily. Business Daily, World Bank's new conditions freeze 96.9 billion shilling Kenyan loan. Ile mvutano between Kenya and the Bretton Woods institutions do continue. So these are the local dailies and we'll be back to take a look at them in depth in a short while. For now, tuvuke border tujue wanazungumzia mambo gani. Na mbona tuliruka huyu? And it's a very special paper, the fresh one, independent and different. Absolutely. The Star, they are friends by the way. So do grab yourself a copy of this paper. 60 shillings ukiwa hapa, 2,000 ukiwa kule Uganda, Tanzania 1,000. Yeah.
Multiple fees to hurt Kenya's tourism appeal. That story, we'll be telling you more about it.
Oh yes. Tukivuka border, na kabla mimi mbona ndangangana kuvuka border. I think I'm looking for Museveni on the front pages. Once again on State of the Nation today, being a Monday, we'll be having veteran politician Kipruto Rapkirwa with us in studio to discuss what's happening both within our borders and beyond our borders. Cafe Rungu governance expert will also be with us alongside Wakili Kibe Mungai. Coming away at exactly 6:30 this morning. You do not want to miss this conversation. Later on at 8 a.m., as Anne said, it is Monday. So Monday Blitz, a lot of discussions from the weekend sports. Arsenal ni kama walikanyaga break kidogo. Alafu Liverpool wakatandikwa propa kichapo cha niseme cha mbwa.
That's the only way to describe it.
Yes, hiyo altandikwa. Anyway, we'll get to that at 8. For now, let's continue with the dailies. Go regional, and this is the East African.
Region reels from Dar port pileup, and the crisis in Tanzania disrupted East Africa's supply chains, led to congested ports and millions of dollars in losses in the economies. Tanzania sneezed, and East Africa Commission caught a cold.
Hapana, hii ni kama mmesema. Ingekuwa ni Kenya, tukisneeze, wana faint.
Are you sure?
Yes, wasitulete. There are only about 17 cargo ships that were in the Tanzanian waters that could not dock because of the protests. Ingekuwa Kenya, those would be like 52 or 60 something. But anyway, let's give it to them for now. Focus is on Tanzania, majirani. Kuna shida mingi sana. They sneezed.
And we are coughing.
All right.
All right, that story is on page 4 and 5. Other quick headlines here. $5 billion ECOP funding soon up, and project sponsors deploy mix of shareholders' equity, commercial loans to secure financing for the regional pipeline. False start, EAC slips back to trade deficit, and they say trade balance fluctuated from a surplus of $416 million to a deficit of $974 million, blamed on Trump's tariffs drop in China exports. That's the regional outlook, the East African.
Let's go to Tanzania, and that's where we start. Take a look at what's happening there. A fresh call for confession, forgiveness, and healing. And you know, this is a trend that continues. In South Africa, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. After what happened in apartheid, and now everything happened, and Mandela came out of prison, then they came up with this. But it was a result of a long time, over years and decades, then they talked about this. In Kenya, after the post-election violence of 2008, there was also the TJRC, Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission, but it came months later. This one, it's not even a month. It's only weeks after what happened. Is it 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Yes, and they're already calling for confession, forgiveness, and healing. How soon do you go for that? But anyway, this is what they're talking about there. They're not talking about the number of people who died. They're not talking about the families that are burying their dead. They're not talking about the fact that it's 98% win in an election. They're not talking about the fact that CCM has 99% of parliament. They're talking about confession, forgiveness, and healing in Tanzania. How fast? Jirani tafadhali, tupeleke pole pole.
Usiwafunze kazi.
Acknowledging mistakes and healing wounds are among steps proposed by various stakeholders just days, yes, just days, after Vice President Emmanuel Nchimbi announced the government's intention to launch reconciliation talks. Washasema wanataka kuzungumzia opposition. Dialogue tafadhali. Ndio tuende confession, forgiveness, and healing. Haraka haraka hii maneno tukiendanga. Anyway, that's Tanzania, that's the approach. Ingekuwa ni Kenya, tambua not so fast. Tulia, there are things to be addressed. Other stories given prominence, the kind of person Tanzania needs as Prime Minister. The 13th Parliament convenes tomorrow in Dodoma, with CCM having 270 out of 272, where among other matters, the new Prime Minister will be proposed and endorsed. Tanzanians have voiced their expectations of the next hold of the powerful post. Should they even be discussing that? And even electing speakers of parliament? Ama ni discuss ile shida iko tayari. Anyway, ni kwa jirani sio kwetu. Who will succeed Mr. Kassim Majaliwa? Question mark out there on who should be the next Prime Minister. Mother recounts dreams of daughter killed in unrest. You see now, these are the things that are being buried underneath, being swept under the carpet. Hii hawatashughulikia sana. Haraka haraka confession, forgiveness, and healing tukiendanga. CCM Zungu looks set to be elected next Speaker of Parliament after parties nod. And I don't know why, but you do question the genuineness of these discussions of moving forward very fast. We to elect Speaker, appoint Prime Minister, we will forgive each other and heal. Tukienda. Meanwhile, families are burying the dead. That's a citizen.
Still in Tanzania, gazeti la Mwananchi, Bagonza ataja mbinu za kuliponya taifa makovu ya uchaguzi mwaka 2025. Agusia kukiri makosa kwa makundi husika, kuepukana kulaumiana. Wadau wataja wahusika waliopoteza maisha, kujeruhiwa, pia waliliwa. Huyu ni askofu mkuu kule, anasema kwamba liundwe tume ya kuweka ukweli hadharani ili iundwe tume ya kuweka ukweli hadharini ili kujua nani asamehewe, aridhiane na nani, achukuliwe hatua za kisheria nani, afidiwe nani ikiwa ni hatua za kuepusha yajayo. Tume hiyo au kamati ya maridhiano inapatikanaje, inawajibika kwa nani? Hili ni muhimu. So, ama ni yeye is calling for confession, forgiveness, and healing.
I think this one is better because there's mention of the necessity for justice as well. Ni nani atapelekwa mahakamani, nani atalaumiwa, nani atahukumiwa. Because this one does not make mention of justice. It's just confession, forgiveness, and healing. Let's move on. Yeah, or forget about what happened. Whoever did it, we don't care. Whoever was killed, no. Let's confess, forgive, and heal.
Anyway, read that story on page 3. Maybe iko hapo ndani.
Huyu at least amesema itabidi tujue nani atapelekwa mahakamani.
Alright, makovu ya uchaguzi mwaka huu, habari kamili katika ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili la Mwananchi. Mabadiliko tabia nchi, maji ya bahari yanavyomeza mashamba, ni habari nyingine hapo. Ndoto za Tina zilivyozimwa kwa risasi. Ndio hiyo hapa, na ni kama ashazikwa. Mezaliwa 2002. Very young. That's the reason page 3. Vigezo vya kuamua mrithi wa Majaliwa. Nani atamrithi Kassim Majaliwa? Hili ni moja ya swali linalogonga vichwa vya Watanzania wengi wenye hamu ya kujua nani atakayemrithi. Kule juu, CCM kwenda na Zungu, uspika silo unaibu spika. Gazeti la Mwananchi, that's Tanzania.
As far as Tanzania is concerned, they've already moved on. Hizo zingine ni nyinyi mnazungumzia, hawa hawana shida. Let's go to Uganda, and they've also moved on in as far as campaigns are concerned. The Daily Monitor, let the vote hunt begin. The real battle, they call it. Thousands of candidates vying for parliamentary, mayoral and local council positions will today kick off a 2-month-long campaign period that will climax with the January 15th general election. So yes, we've been talking about the presidential campaigns, which kicked off, I think, a month ago. But now they're talking about the parliamentary, mayoral and local council positions as well. So those who have gotten parliamentary and party tickets are now officially kicking off their campaigns across Uganda. So they have 529 slots available for the different parliamentary positions, but the number of contestants are totaling 2,711. Yeah. So kuna constituency MPs were about 353. They are more than actually our Kenyan parliament. Bicameral parliament, we have 349 in total. They have 353 parliamentary seats. There are district woman MPs, 146, worker slots, people with disabilities. And you see 529 in total in Uganda, which is a smaller country compared to Kenya, which has in total compared to senators, National Assembly, women reps, we have total 349, including nominated. They have 529. Yeah, that's how Uganda does it. Other stories here, Kampala City traders suspend strike over taxes. Tight security as Senior 9 exams, Senior 6 exams kick off today. And Museveni warns of future wars over access to the sea. Pale juu, they make mention of those activists who were released just recently in Uganda. Kenyan activists, our 38 days of torture, horror in Uganda. Bob Njagi na mwenzake finally at least wako pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Daily Monitor in Uganda.
Still in Uganda, the new vision, Uganda's credit rating improves. Country now has capacity to fully pay back loans, according to a report that has been covered in page 3. Tukisonga rakaraka, Museveni swears in principal judge, DPP and IGG, right here on the front page, wako hapa wote, seated there in the middle, as President Yoweri Museveni na maski yake kama kawaida. A-level exam starts today. Campaigns, what Mafabi Muntu and Chagulani told voters. The top strip, campaigns for members of parliament, district candidates start today. That's the new vision. All
right. So those are the discussions across East Africa this morning. A lot of campaign talk in Uganda, a lot of healing, forgiveness and reconciliation and moving on in Tanzania. Back home, we'll be back to take a look at the dailies, tuzungumze tujue ni nini watu wanazungumzia haswa hapa Kenya. But before that, tuangalie hali ya anga across different regions of this country. And we start off with the Mount Kenya region. Today we focus on Murang'a, where it is cloudy day, partly cloudy, they say. Highs of 26 degrees in as far as temperatures are concerned, which is a bit warm for Murang'a today. A bit of precipitation expected there, 1.3 millimeters. And I'm glad that this has gone back to the interface that we were seeing previously. Last week, walikuwa wametuletea mambo ingine mpya. And these warm temperatures in Murang'a, relatively warm, will persist for the rest of the week.
Weather in Isiolo, it's 19, you thought I was going to say that wrong. It's 19 degrees.
You said it, not me.
Feels like it. It's a partly cloudy day here. Highs of 30 degrees. Precipitation in this region is 0.4 millimeters. Sasa jua kutawaka kule.
And unaona hapa ni 30. Once it gets to tomorrow, it gets to 31, meaning that we're going to experience warmer temperatures in Isiolo as we go forward. Down south at the coast, in Mombasa today, it is quite warm, 24 degrees Celsius, partly cloudy. A lot of sunshine today. Hii nakwambia it's countdown to Christmas. This is proper holiday weather, unaona? Very few clouds, 29 degrees. It's even going to get warmer next week at 30. So yes, very nice temperatures. 0.4 millimeters precipitation hii hautasikia. So kama unataka kwenda holiday, I think now imeanza vizuri.
In Eldoret this morning it's 14 degrees, feels like 13. A mostly cloudy day. Highs of 23 degrees. Precipitation here today is 0.6 millimeters. Holiday weather too.
Ni kama ile mvua imeenda ikipunguka area nyingi. Ukambani, Kitui, it's a bit warm. They say it is a cloudy day, but currently it is 19 degrees Celsius. Cloudy for most part of the day, highs of 27 degrees, and this will portend for the next weekend and week as well. A bit of precipitation expected in Kitui at 1.5 millimeters, which I think is the highest we've seen so far. Lake Victoria region?
19 degrees. Kisumu feels like 24 this morning. It's a cloudy day. Highs of 27 degrees and precipitation in Kisumu today, 3.5 millimeters. That's the highest we're seeing today. This 27 degrees will even go higher from tomorrow to 29. Ikielekea weekend.
Inaenda ikipanda, unaona next week kuna mali nafika 30. So enjoy the cooler temperatures in Kisumu today. Finally, Nairobi.
Ala?
Lazima tuone Nairobi. Waspende.
What's happening? Is it me? Am I the problem?
Let me try it from this other end. Ni kama inaleta ile shida. We'll be back to take a look at that temperature in Nairobi. Waache kutuletea maneno yao. Ni kama wataki tuangalie.
Yes.
But we could start off probably with the... I can see
traffic,
what's happening with
16
traffic.
minutes past 6.
Hey, okay, tumechelewa kiasi. So in as far as traffic is concerned this Monday, nothing out of the ordinary. A bit of a stretch here of red at Makadara along Jogoo Road and a bit of a yellow there at the City Stadium roundabout. After that, the only other problem I see is Haile Selassie Avenue getting busy. Other major highways into town are looking good. Thika Road, interestingly, at this time of day, even the Pangani interchange is looking easy. So today it looks like it's an easy traffic day across Nairobi. All major tributaries into town are looking easy. Enjoy as you travel to the city center. So, all right.
Let's have the quote of the day.
Time continues moving forward, so don't let it pass you by. Instead of dwelling on the clock, focus on taking steady steps, even if they seem small.
All right, magazeti ya Kenya yanasema nini? Turejee kuangalia hayo. Very interesting photo there on the front page of the Standard. We have all three presidents of the East African nations, okay, the main, if I may call them that, EAC, the original, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, all dressed in military fatigues. Pale, a trinity of terror. Repression rising. So when Uganda's Yoweri Museveni admitted the two Kenyans had been tortured while in his country's custody, he unwittingly fanned the flames of repression spreading across East Africa. Once seen as the region's elder statesman, Museveni now speaks as the world still reels from the bloodshed that accompanied Tanzania's October 29 election that handed President Suluhu total victory and a new reputation for strong arm rule. Now in Kenya, the soil has barely settled over the graves of slain youth, while others remain missing. East Africa is first beginning to resemble the 1930s Europe of Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Ion Antonescu of Romania. Now you see your comparison. Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Antonescu. You know, hey, anyway. So that's a comparison that's being made there. And they have a quote here by Yoweri Museveni. And some two Kenyans were arrested. They have been with us. I'm not able to remember their names. They came, they are working with Chagulani's group. That they're experts in riots, of course, with our very good intelligence. We picked them up, and they have been in the fridge for some days. So casually. They've been cooling their heels. Now some Kenyan leaders rang me and said I should hand them back or put them in jail. So casually. And that's the story on page 6 of this paper. Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo were eventually released after 39 days in captivity. And now they're recounting their horrific tales from Uganda. The other headline still connected to that, Tanzania cracks down on senior opposition leaders. And that story, Trinity of Terror, Samia's rule fuels East Africa's rise as repression hub. Back to page 2 of the Standard, kuna story about how one of the Kenyan observers of the Tanzanian elections escaped death. Sema, I narrowly escaped death. Tanzania elections observer narrates ordeal. I was with this person in college, I think, a governance expert. And tafuta niambie kulienda namna gani. All right, so that's the main story. On the back page, Matter Sports on the Standard. Ateta unhappy with how Arsenal conceded after draw at Sunderland. Yeah, very unfortunate because they would have actually opened up the gap at the top of the EPL table to considerable points. Now, wanasikia Man City wakibreathe hapa nyuma. That's the Standard.
Tukisonga mbele, the Daily Nation, abductions, how Museveni caved in. Admission, Uganda authorities had denied knowledge of the whereabouts of the abductees. Mounting pressure from the United Nations and the Kenyan government, direct family appeals, and fears over the health of rights activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo forced Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni to order their release from military detention. On Saturday, Mr. Museveni admitted that he had the duo arrested and detained, even as he bragged about the effectiveness of his country's security apparatus. That story is on page 2 and 3. How Museveni caved in, the two abducted on October 1st, shortly after attending a campaign rally organized by Ugandan opposition leader Bobi Wine. Njagi and Oyo were in Ugandan military hospital for 1 week. Incarceration, the two were held in detention in Uganda for exactly 38 days. This story is on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. They make mention of Tanzania in page 4. They say tribulations in Tanzanian cells. Kenyan returnees speak.
Well, they were saying that they were arrested in Tanzania simply for being Kenyan. Yeah. Now, being Kenyan is almost illegal in Tanzania. You know, when I'm Kenya, ingia ndani. Tutajua ingine baadaye.
Suluhu illegitimate ex-president asserts governance hammer criticizes BA's victory in Cameroon. On the front page, they say boost school infrastructure, head teachers now demand. And on the back page, Gor Mahia gun down police, shoot to top of league table. Home team Bandari scored a chance to gain ground in title race. And Newcastle's miserable away from form continues with loss at Brentford. That's the Daily Nation.
All right. So still focusing on Museveni and at least the release of those two Kenyans. Kenyans facing a lot of trouble in both Uganda and Tanzania, and that's the focus of most of our dailies. Taifa Leo chooses to go with our local politics and ile siasa ya pale Mlimani. Mimi tu ndio kusema Mlimani. Nani huyu? Ni Rigathi Gachagua aliyekuwa naibu wa rais. Gachagua ashauri wakazi wa Mlima kumsikiza yeye tu, akidai vyama vingine vyote isipokuwa DCP ni wheelbarrow. Hata Jubilee. Lakini Uhuru si alisema waache kumtusi. Sema afurahi na akasema atawafukuza kwa hiyo chama. Mkiendelea hivi nitawafukuza. You know, that's a real threat. Sema nitawatoa hapa mbio. Ni siasa tu. Gachagua anasema hayo siku mbili tu baada ya Uhuru Kenyatta ambaye ndio kinara wa Jubilee kuwahimiza wakazi wa Mlima Kenya kumheshimu Gachagua licha ya rais huyo mstaafu kuonekana kama anayetoa ushindani kwa DCP kupitia chama chake cha Jubilee. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Tutakuja kuzungumzia haya tukiwa na wageni wangu wa asubuhi ya leo. Mengine yaliyopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili la Taifa Leo ni pigo, Trump akifuta ziara ya makamu wake Kenya. Hii ni baada ya Trump kusema hatahudhuria kikao cha G20 Afrika Kusini. But Trump is being very selective. So he said that the government in Tanzania, in South Africa, is actually against the white South Africans. It says white South Africans are being killed. And so he decided now America will not be part of the G20 summit in South Africa. That's why we were expecting J.D. Vance to travel to Kenya as he heads to the summit. But now he said no American official will attend the G20 summit. So hata J.D. Vance haji. Ni sawa tu, lakini anashughulikia hiyo, alafu anashughulikia Wakristo kule Nigeria. Lakini Sudan hana shughuli sana.
Yes, South Africa nayo inaweza support. South Africa is very xenophobic though.
Well, kuna shida nyingi kule. Tukirejea hapa nyumbani, Nyanza ibaki serikalini. Nani amesema? Hii ni waziri wa Kawi Opiyo Wandayi. Anawasihi wakazi na viongozi wa Nyanza kutojiondoa katika serikali jumuishi baina ya ODM na UDA. Lakini UDA sasa ndio naanza kuisikia. Watu walikuwa wamesahau kuna chama kama UDA. Kwingineko, masaibu tuliyopitia Tanzania ni wanafanyabiashara wa Kenya waeleza walivyoteswa kwa siku 8 ndani ya vituo vya polisi kule Tanzania kwa kusingiziwa kuwa walikuwa waandamanaji. Kule ukiwa tu ni Mkenya kuna shida. Masuala ya spoti pale juu, Chelsea fiti, Arsenal na Man United hoi. Ni kweli tu masuala ya spoti mtazungumziwa mengi kwenye Monday Blitz. Fred Arocho, Katela Macy watakuwa hapa. Kwingineko, Museveni akiri kutesa wa Kenya. Kiongozi huyo alijigamba namna alivyowafungia Njagi na Oyo katika friji. Na anasema tu hivyo. And they forget that there are Ugandans here in Kenya as well. Very unfortunate. Taifa Leo.
People Daily, regional shifts ahead of 2027 race tectonic plates, they say. Kule Rift Valley, Ruto's fortress stays firm but certainly not flawless. Recent move to tame Kanu in the region could be a sign of tension in his own backyard. Kule Mount Kenya, the mountain is aligning itself behind Jubilee Party leader Uhuru Kenyatta and DCP's Rigathi Gachagua. In Ukambani, Kalonzo clings to his crown as Kenya Kwanza tries to woo the region with roads and jobs. Coast region, ODM's tide recedes as the coast tests life beyond Raila's shadow. And in the Western Kenya, the Luhya Unity song plays again as Mudavadi and Wetangula face the rising force of Natembeya. That's the only story covered on the front page of the People Daily. People and politics.
It was tectonic plates, zimeshift kiasi. Very interesting. All right, matters business. World Bank's new conditions freeze 96.9 billion shilling Kenyan loan. This multilateral lender wants measures to cut budget deficit. Loan disbursement was expected before end of June. Now, how this will impact on the Kenya's fiscal space, you can follow more on page 2 of the Business Daily. Safaricom raised a stake in Ethiopian unit to 53.3%. That's another story. Na maswala ya head teachers who are calling for smooth transition to senior school, also featuring there. Remember senior school, walimaliza junior school, JSS, walimaliza exams last week. So now the focus is on how they will transition to senior school. On the ticker, student loan defaults hit 380.5 billion as help cash woes deepen. Dutch firm grants 8 billion to cut water prices at the coast and statized 15-year bond for 390 billion SGR Malaba line. That's the Business Daily.
Finally, the Star, multiple fees to hurt Kenya's tourism appeal, and industry players fear losing to more affordable competing markets. The story is on page 4 and 5. It says, increased game park entry fees and changes in payment systems have thrown Kenya's tourism and travel industry into disarray, and sector players fear losing to more affordable competing markets. And higher costs will translate to job losses if tour operators, hotels along safari circuits and inside parks, suppliers and related businesses reduce operations due to international tourists shunning Kenya for cheaper African destinations. Na kama walikuwa na strike on November 5th here has been covered on the front page.
Gate charges za kwenda parks zimekuwa very high, and you see we're heading to the holiday season. Most families will want to experience that, but it's true. KWS has hiked their fees for entry to national parks significantly.
Ruto accuses opposition of dragging Kenya back as XDP dismisses first world ambition. It's another story on page 9. Pilgrimage to Bondo. Hordes of mourners continue to flock to Raila's final resting place. On the top strip, museums discovers early tool making that survived 300,000 years. That's the Star, fresh, independent and different.
Right, so those are basically the kind of headlines that we'll be looking at with my panelists. Kipruto Rapkiro, a veteran politician, will be in studio alongside governance analyst Kathy Rungu and Wakili Kibe Mungai in a few minutes, so do stand by for that conversation. Later on at 8, we'll be switching to Matters Sports with the team led by Fred Arocho and Katela Macy discussing the weekend sports. Let's take a look at what the cartoonists are talking about. Tujue ni kama are they aligning with the same big headlines on the front pages. This is a cartoon on the Daily Nation talking about matters voter registration. Once again, IEBC wamelala pale kwa meza. Alafu hapa kuna helikopta inazunguka ile empowerment inarusha tu pesa. Vijana wamekimbia huko kuokota pesa, wamesahau kujiregister kama wapiga kura. Alafu watakuja wasema wamekasirika sana how this kind of system does not favor them. Gen Z, lakini tafadhali. Do you know that only 90,000 have registered since the voter registration began 2-3 months ago?
Mwanangoja last minute.
Anyway, let's hope that IEBC will have a mass voter registration exercise sometime next year. Just hoping. Lakini inahitaji pesa pia.
This is the People Daily. The Prime CS has been caricatured here again. Lakini this time akaona tu twist. Anasema help is here kule Tanzania, lakini Tanzania Wakenya wanachomeka kule ndani.
And this is not the first time he's been caricatured as a tortoise.
Yes.
Movement yake imekuwa very slow. Very slow to respond, very slow to demand that Kenyans' rights are protected beyond our borders. It's just purely very slow. So yeye na tortoise, same. The Standard talks about an audit report on matters education that found a number of schools, at least 10 secondary schools do not have any students, but they have teachers. So hapa kuna mwalimu ako darasani na hakuna hata mtu mmoja darasani, alafu anasema so boys and girls, that's your homework for today, na analipwa mshahara na amepaka makeup daily. Anaenda nyumbani alafu anasema ametoka kazini na hakuna wanafunzi.
Finally, the Star, shareholder politics. The former deputy president has been caricatured here, amesema 50%.
Nataka mkate nusu.
Alafu wengine wagawane hiyo.
Ingine mdawa.
You can share the rest, slices. All right, those are the stories making headlines locally and regionally as well. Do interact with us on our socials. TV47 Kenya on Facebook and on YouTube, on X at TV47 Digital. My handle on X is at @Ann_Odida. The hashtag is Morning Cafe TV47.
My handle is at Fred Indimuli. See you after the break.
No more excuses. It's time to rise, grind, and own your mornings. Join Coach Shadrach Ouma every Monday to Friday from 5:30 to 6 a.m. only on TV47. Full body workouts, zero equipment, maximum results. Start strong, stay strong. TV47 Fitness with Coach Shadrach only on TV47. Looking for the perfect way to kick off your weekend?
Pole. Hiyo ni salamu ya Mluya kabisa.
Tune in to Friday with Betty, the most exciting show on TV.
Betty, one thing. Betty, I don't know where this guy's going.
Walikutoka.
From the latest news and trends to unforgettable moments.
Mimi si simpa. Hiyo naona nakubali.
Wewe ni simpa.
Friday with Betty is your go-to show for a fabulous Friday night.
Theological, meteorologist. What is that word, Willis?
Tune in this and every Friday at 9 p.m. and let's make your Fridays unforgettable. Only on TV47. Enjoy uninterrupted live streaming of your favorite programs on TV47 and Radio 47 on the go with our new mobile-friendly website. Experience the future of broadcasting. Visit www.tv47.digital or scan this QR code and stream your way to endless news and entertainment. Welcome to the home of untold stories.
This is Kenya's #1 talk show, Dr. Farika tonight. My name is the Eagle himself. Dr. Farika is my name.
We are flipping the script, but guess what? Or should I say, guess who is taking over tonight's show?
Yaani wewe furahia umekaa na kasipuni. CP unit ni Punet.
Ni Punet.
Punet.
So you guys knew about...
Piga.
Sawa basi. Sema, that gave you the whole time.
I don't want to go back to brokenness.
Never.
I want to. I just love the high life. Siwezi taka kuimagine ati nimesota.
You'll have to watch to find out. Tune in every Wednesday from 7:30 p.m.
Next time you need fresh lemon juice, microwave a lemon for 7 to 10 seconds. Then, roll the lemon back and forth under your palm on the counter. When you squeeze, you'll get more juice from the lemon with way less effort.
Start your day with Relationship Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. with Ann Odida. Dive deep into the dynamics of love, friendship, and family as we explore the stories that shape our connections. Then satisfy your appetite with Tasty Wednesday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. where Anne serves up delicious recipes, cooking tips, and the latest food trends to inspire your next meal. Relationship Wednesday and Tasty Wednesday every Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. only on Morning Cafe.
Your nose alone won't always tell you if your eggs have gone bad. To find out, gently place uncooked eggs in a bowl of cold water. If an egg sinks to the bottom, it's A-OK. If it floats, it's seen better days.
We are asking the Kenyan Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ensure that Kenyans in Tanzania are safe. We are asking all neighbors of Tanzania to make sure that their nationals in Tanzania are safe. At this point in time, we have no doubt that foreigners are being targeted, and the Tanzanian government is using foreigners as a scapegoat when they, as a government, are responsible for the chaos, for the mayhem, for the bloodbath that we have witnessed in that country. So our appeal to Musalia Mudavadi, to Korir Sing'oei, the PS, please make sure our brothers and sisters, Kenyans who are in Tanzania, are safe. We want anyone who is injured brought back. And for those that have died, including our brother, the teacher, Okoth Ogutu, we want the body back in Kenya for burial.
Up until their release on Saturday, the Ugandan government had insisted that Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo were not in its custody during the 38 days they were missing. Just a day after their return to Kenya, President Yoweri Museveni, in a media interview, acknowledged that they were in fact arrested, describing them as experts in riots and saying he put them in a fridge for some days.
That they are experts in riots. So they had come to train our people. Of course, with our very good intelligence system, we picked them up. And they have been in the fridge for some days.
They're calling.
In his partial admission, Museveni said the two were released after he received calls from some Kenyan leaders.
Some Kenyan leaders rang me and said that I should hand them back I should either put them in jail here or hand them back. So we are going to, but you could see we are monitoring all of them. They all have connections with foreign countries, foreign groups funding them.
But his statement has raised more questions than answers. He did not clarify which security agency arrested them, who authorized the operation, or where this so-called fridge detention facility was located. Reacting to Museveni's confirmation, Ugandan presidential aspirant Bobi Wine questioned whether other supporters who have been missing for 5 to 6 years are also being held. He claimed that Njagi and Oyo told him they were detained alongside many Ugandans and other foreign nationals. On their return yesterday, Njagi and Oyo shared chilling accounts of their detention, saying they were held in military facility, repeatedly interrogated and at times kept without food for long periods.
Myself, I've been fasting. It's been very difficult, but thank you so much for your solidarity.
Human rights organizations are now demanding a full independent investigation, arguing that contradicting statements from the Ugandan government, silence from security agencies, denial of records and now Museveni's partial admission point to possible unlawful detention. Sheila Chelangat for TV.
It's a worrying trend indeed for Kenyans, especially those ones in neighboring countries like Tanzania and Uganda. We seem to be getting the flack as we are blamed for a lot of what's happening or going wrong in those countries. It is what features on most of the front pages today. President Yoweri Museveni on both the front page of the Daily Nation and the Standard. On the front page of the Daily Nation, of course, with that very casual admission that yes, indeed, Ugandan authorities were holding the two Kenyan activists, Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, in the fridge. I don't know what that meant. On the front page of the Standard is a comparison between the three East African presidents, Samia Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, and even Kenya's William Ruto. All of them, they've used pictures of them in military fatigues, calling them the Trinity of Terror. Kenyans have expressed concern, saying they were simply targeted in Tanzania for being Kenyan and nothing more. The similarities are striking. This morning we're privileged to have in studio Kipruto Rapkirwa, a veteran politician. He served as Minister for Agriculture in the Kibaki administration and is a 4-term MP of Chirangani constituency. Karibu sana.
It's my pleasure.
Kathy Rungo, governance analyst, also with us this morning. Karibu sana, Kathy.
Thank you.
And we'll be talking about matters Jubilee later on because that is also quite interesting once we are done with regional matters. Yeah. And Wakili Kibe Mungai may be joining us later on. But let's start from this. It has now become more or less casual and without consequence that Kenyans are experiencing the same treatment across board in Uganda and Tanzania. Now, this has gotten to a level where the Kenyan authorities should intervene, but according to the portrayal of our Foreign Affairs Department, is that they are moving at snail's pace. In fact, the biggest caricature of that is a tortoise.
Mm-hmm. Well, Fred, it's very interesting, and thank you for having me this morning. It's very interesting the way we treat our citizens, because you see, the prime responsibility of any regime or any government in power is the protection of the people of the country, whether they are here or abroad, and also protection of their property. You see, if whatever we are reading now through the media is that Kenyans are being targeted in Tanzania, and even to a certain extent by the regime in Uganda, is a very dangerous phenomenon, given the fact that we ought to be talking of regional integration. That's why we have expanded our East Africa to include other countries like DRC, South Sudan, and even Somalia, apart from, of course, Rwanda and Burundi, which have been in this particular East Africa community. It is dangerous because we seem to be having leaders, particularly Our Lady from Tanzania, who seems to be allergic to anything Kenyan. forgetting the fact that the trade that is supposed to be between us and Tanzania is a trade that is supposed to be encouraged, given the fact that Africa, we are still lacking in terms of intra-Africa trade. Now, when we seem to be targeting Kenyans, given the fact that Kenyans all the time, even since independence, we've been seen to be the big brother in the East Africa region. That's why Nyerere at some stage was saying, instead of going to London, why don't you go to Nairobi? You will see whatever you would have seen in London here in Nairobi. All that has been a major problem, that there's been a bit of disquiet, but the worst is what the president of Tanzania is doing this particular time. Was in the sense that we should not be encouraging ourselves to fight, because we'll be responding to the narrative that has been pervaded by these other international players, such as the Western. So it is worrying, given the fact that the elections in Tanzania were violent, they were shambolic, and we suspect Uganda may also be equally the same come next year. And the year after that, Kenya may actually face the worst of the times, because we are dealing with somebody whose mindset is akin to what they have compared the issues of Mussolini, people like Ian Konescu, and Adolf Hitler, who in that particular time, run up to 1945, they were the people who terrorized the three countries, Romania, Italy, and Germany, and of course terrorized the region. Incidentally, they all died almost around the same time. Two of them, 1945, one through suicide, and the following year, the rest of the three. I'm not suggesting that the three presidents should die, but they should realize that there is nothing permanent about any position in life. Mm-hmm. The only thing that is permanent is that change is inevitable. And when you see there is this disquiet among the citizens of East Africa, the communication is the same. Bob Njagi and his colleague, they are not trained in any riots. It is only that the issues they have been facing in Kenya has almost rubbed onto Tanzania and also to a certain extent Uganda. It is worrying. It is something that citizens must arise and refuse to be cowed by leaders who believe they own the country.
Yes. And we've seen even in Tanzania that Kenyans who are regarded highly here, former Chief Justice, a former Justice Minister, being deported from Tanzania. Do you think that this is real concern about Kenya's involvement in the internal affairs of any of these countries, or we're simply being used as scapegoats?
First, thank you very much, Ndimuli. So it's actually very concerning, because Bob Njagi and Oyo are not the first people who have either been held incommunicado or even in fringes, as Museveni said. Last year we had the case of Boniface Mwangi, if you remember, and the other one. We've also had a case of Martha Karua when she went to court to represent the presidential candidate from Uganda. So all these things have been happening amidst a lot of agitation and concerns from Kenyans and from the citizens from the region entirely, the East African region. It is concerning, but then when I look at the three presidents, Museveni, Suluhu, and Ruto, they seem to be covering each other. I think they face the same challenges and they understand that. But they also need to realize that the citizens are not their enemies. If they can change their ways, if they can lead better, they will not have all these challenges. But right now, to me, they're actually trying to cover each other. And that is why, even from our end, the government is not speaking out strongly against some of these acts. Yeah, and the attacks on Kenyans, like when you listen to Suluhu, when she says, kwa jirani hakukaliki, and then from there now she has gone on to say that even the demonstrations in Uganda, the people who participated were not Ugandans. I mean, were not Tanzanians. Really, I don't think that is true. So on one side, this is where the citizens should actually realize that we are fighting for a common, they're fighting for a common good, or we are fighting for a common good, but it can also leave you very exposed. And I feel most of our activists should now maybe just take a step backwards and realize that maybe we just do our politics here without meddling with our jirani and our neighbors on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, but the level, and allow me to welcome Wakili Kibe Mungai to this conversation. Karibu sana, Wakili, and good morning. We're just examining the front pages of the Daily Nation and the Standard and the trend that we're seeing across East Africa, especially when it comes to the safety of Kenyans in those two countries. And we're seeing a growing trend that Kenyans, or being Kenyan, is now almost being considered criminal once you cross the border into either Uganda or Tanzania. And we're asking the question, are we simply being used as scapegoats, or is there a reality that yes, we could be, to some level, meddling in the affairs of those countries?
Yes, that's a good question, but it needs to be understood in a historical context, in the sense that when you look at the three countries in terms of constitutional, civil society, and political sophistication and evolution, Kenya has gone the farthest, in the sense that courtesy of the 2010 constitutions, we are a real democracy, despite the fact that there is recent trends to reverse some of the gains under the new constitution. The constitution, of course, is intact, but you have seen very many laws being made to reverse those gains that have been made. These are the countries, like I said the last time, Tanzania remains the most backward, in the sense that their constitution is still largely the one-party constitution. Even these deeply flawed elections cannot be challenged in the courts. You saw Suluhu has effectively embarrassed even other African dictators. Like this thing of saying you are getting 98% of the votes. Nowadays, the trend has been you somehow get yourself declared as re-elected or elected if you are the incumbent, but letting the opposition, by and large, to win in the areas. So Tanzania remains seriously backward. But I also wish to say in favor of Tanzania that historically, a lot of Kenyan citizens, including Willy Mutunga, when they were facing repression at home, both during the time of Jomo Kenyatta and the time of Daniel Arap Moi, it is Tanzania that would give refuge to them, and from more citizens of Africa. So that one would say that even from the level of the fact that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere appeared to have been, despite the fact that he was a dictator like the others, in terms of upholding rights and freedoms, but from a Pan-African point of view, he actually accommodated people who were under repression and people he believed were fighting for a betterment of their own countries. But Uganda is a more troubling scenario in two senses. Even during the time of Jomo Kenyatta, Congo Karumba, you could hear people went to Uganda, they were killed under circumstances in which government officials or whichever other way were implicated. You could see people would go to Uganda to seek refuge. They would somehow be betrayed, and some of them had to run away from there. So Uganda, and the fact that they had the long civil war, the fact that it was won by Museveni through an armed struggle, a guerrilla war, was also more of a curse than a blessing, in the sense that although Museveni would later on wear civilian clothes, he remains essentially a guerrilla, a person who believes that ultimately it is the AK-47 that keeps him in power. And this would be remembered during the time that Kizza Besigye, there's some time he had defeated him in elections, and he wore the military attire and said that nobody can be permitted to declare, he can only leave the State House of Uganda through the gun, because it is not the people, it is the gun that put him in control. So that Uganda, by and large, remains also, Tanzania, they have had several changes of the presidency, but Uganda, by and large, remains a dictatorship, a military dictatorship in civilian garb. And this is why his son and Museveni, they talk, they're about putting Kenyans in the fridge. And to add now on that, that Kenyans are being put in the fridge and people are bragging about it. You read in the newspaper that the son of Museveni saying, it is only that President Uhuru Kenyatta, I respect him, so I agreed to remove him because of some of the call that he may have placed. So you actually see the betrayal, and Professor Macharia Monene wrote about it yesterday in the Standard. The first duty of the citizens of any government is to protect its citizens who are menaced abroad. But it would appear, and this is now when people say, probably because you cannot be able to count on the Kenya government to protect you, probably you should not be going outside Kenya for any reason. So that's a huge betrayal. And the huge betrayal starts at the level of the president. If you cannot be able to protect your citizens, and other dictators are bragging how your citizens are fair game for torture, for repression, it is really a letdown. The final position on that is this, that we are in East African community. When you're in East African community, you would expect you would have an association, solidarity at the level of our leaders, which appears to be now a trinity of repression, a trinity of dictatorship. But a true solidarity would expect that even citizens themselves, I can go to Uganda, we have the East African Law Society of Kenya, for example, like lawyers.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. Is that a route for a redress for any of those people who feel a bit repressed or probably mistreated in any of these countries?
Definitely it is. And yesterday, actually, a thought came across my mind, and I was wondering whether we can encourage the Law Society of Kenya to tell their colleagues in Uganda, because what happened to Bob Njage and his colleague is actually unconstitutional even under the Ugandan constitution. So I don't know to the extent to which Yoweri Museveni, or even if he doesn't get to Yoweri Museveni, the Ugandan government can actually be sued in Uganda by the citizens of Kenya because they were hurt in Uganda. And therefore this should help. But I insist that true East African community, if it would ever mean something, it must mean that at the higher level, the institutions of East Africa are working, the leaders are friends to each other, you attend each other's ceremony. But more importantly, on another level, that we must be seen to be closer to Ugandans and members of the East African community, probably more than the Egyptians. Otherwise, it means nothing, absolutely.
Yes. The other trend we're seeing, and I don't know, because probably that's what the Standard saw, is a trend where it would appear that there's a militarization of the governance structures. That's why we see a lot of these presidents. Probably it would look nice, and many Kenyans would like to see your president as a commander-in-chief wearing military fatigues. But according to this, it's also a trend, and it portrays something different as well. We've seen it happen. Of course, Museveni is a military man. In Tanzania now we saw the military take over very fast. We've seen this in Kenya as well. Do you feel that there's a risk in that to the democracy in this region when we release the military from their barracks so fast?
Yeah, first of all, it should be understood that as a commander-in-chief, every president in our republic has some kind of ceremonial position, and even when he wears military fatigue, it is meant to be ceremonial. He does not turn himself or herself into a military person. While it is a trend that is increasingly becoming common in the region, that when the situation does not obtain democratically, you resort to certain unorthodox means, which I suspect Museveni, if Bobi Wine is going to win the next election in Uganda, he's not going to be sworn in. Museveni will take over through the military and say he's doing his last term, and even insist that he would support and campaign for Bobi Wine in the subsequent election. Whether that election will find us still around is a serious problem. Now, when we come to Kenya, our president has been known to be militant and violent. A number of times, whenever he faces a challenge, he resorts to goons and other unorthodox ways of trying to resolve a problem. The danger, given the fact that there's been a lot of disquiet, even among the military boys and girls, in terms of certain promotions that have taken place, is a worrying trend that perhaps by the next general election, it is highly likely that the realignment at the military level in Kenya will have been done in a way that it seems almost to scare or scaremonger the rest of us who may not agree with President Ruto. It is a situation that we must call upon the government that military is not a solution in Kenya. We've had a peaceful transitions from President Kenyatta passing on and President Moi taking over for 24 years. Regardless of whatever people think or talk about President Moi was more disciplined in terms of following procedure. Even if it was the issue of detention without trial, that was provided by amendment of the Constitution, I think in 1968, to provide for detention without trial for anybody who is seen to be creating a risk to the stability of the nation. And therefore, he used the instruments of state according to the law, according to the Constitution. But what I'm getting and is worrying me is a clawback on the gains that we've been able to get out of the amendment of the Constitution and the 2010 Constitution that provides for certain freedoms without let. This is a situation that we should be worried, given the fact that I'm increasingly worried whether President Ruto is willing to cede that particular position. And it's going to be chaotic. Okay. Because any polls today, anybody would know that 60% of Kenyans or more, they say one term. Those who are talking of two term are people who are conveniently trying to allow themselves to be part of the stakeholders of the state. And finally, on this particular issue, why do presidents get so scared to the extent that they do not allow the competition to prevail? And yet, like Slu, she says she got 98% of the votes cast. And yet she did not allow the competition from the opposition. If the opposition was going to take away 2%, why are you worried? You should have made a ceremonial for her to win regardless of who is running in the opposition.
Right.
This is something that is worrying, and it's not only in East Africa. The entire continent is now getting through another phase of militarization, where either it's a coup d'etat or those in power, they want to use the force of the gun instead of the force of the vote.
And this could be seen, Kathy, as probably a general response to the rise in the Gen Z. And this is across that most leaders are now resorting to the military, militarization. We saw it in Kenya as well with the Gen Z protests. And even as we consider this, I think it's time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at that, the continuous and this growing trend of militarization of the state. You're watching Morning Cafe.
No more excuses. It's time to rise, grind, and own your mornings. Join Coach Shadrach Omer every Monday to Friday from 5:30 to 6 a.m. Only on TV 47. Full body workouts, zero equipment, maximum results. Start strong, stay strong. TV 47 Fitness with Coach Shadrach. Only on TV 47. Looking for the perfect way to kick off your weekend?
Pole. Hiyo ni salamu ya Mluya kabisa.
Tune in to Friday with Betty, the most exciting show on TV.
Betty, one thing. Betty, I don't know where this guy's going.
Walikutoka.
From the latest news and trends to unforgettable moments.
Mimi ni simpa. Hiyo naona nakubali.
Wewe ni simpa.
Friday with Betty is your go-to show for a fabulous Friday night.
Theological, meteorological, meteorologist.
Welcome back to Morning Cafe this morning. Trinity of Terror. And we have images here, pictures of the three East African presidents, Samia Suluhu Hassan, Yoweri Museveni, and William Ruto, all in military fatigues. And the question now is the militarization of the state. And this could be a suggestion that probably it's an easy way out for most of these people to go beyond the constitution once they find themselves in trouble, probably in response to the agitation by Gen Zs mostly, that it's easy to turn to the gun. We saw it in Kenya's context as well. And even without the approval of Parliament, hours before he could get that approval from Parliament, the military was already out.
Yeah.
Is this a growing trend? Is it worrying to you?
It's a growing trend, first of all. It should worry all of us. The good thing is that I think Kenyans came out strongly and really spoke about it, against it. And, but was the president moved? He wasn't moved, even after the agitation that the military need to get out, get out of the streets and allow the young people to demonstrate peacefully, because they were actually peaceful. But still, they went ahead. I think every time I've seen heads of state in military fatigue, it is sent some chills, It's actually a way of selling fear, basically, because the timing is always very specific. You'll see them do that when they are protest, like what was happening with the Gen Zs. You will see that when maybe there's an nullification of an election, or around this time when Samia Suluhu was actually showing her intentions, that she was going to rig the election either way. So it's a worrying trend. It's something that should worry any serious Kenyan, because the message that is being sent to us is that we must toe the line. And by toeing the line, it means that we cannot question even when they rig elections. And it should worry all of us.
Yes. The understanding is that there is a clear-cut role that the military plays, Wakili.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis the police. In Tanzania, we saw immediately after the elections, and there was a sense of unrest. The military came out to the streets and told police, stay away, we are now in charge. And yes. Should that be the case, that military intervention comes within hours or within even an election setup? What does that say about our level of democracy?
Well, in neutrality of the military and the need for the military to keep off politics, and that is why the president is commander-in-chief, that the ultimate commander-in-chief of the military should be a civilian, duly elected by the people. It is an important aspect of a constitutional democracy. And as I believe Honorable Kirwa was saying, this is supposed to ensure that the military answers to the command of democracy. That is the subjugation of the people with guns to democratic governance. But this constitutional rule, it is in Uganda, as I've just said, is different in the sense that that is an active soldier in civilian garb. Mm-hmm. In places like Tanzania, it still remains a backward single-party state. Now Suluhu has removed the pretense by ensuring that she wins everything, and even there is no opposition in parliament. The more concern should be in our country, Kenya, in the sense that increasingly there is a tendency, which Honorable Kira was alluding to the fact that serious attempts are being made in the military to politicize it through appointments, retirements, and all these kind of things. Things that ultimately they portend a scenario where by 2027 you may have the military coming out and playing a bigger role that is not constitutionally permissible. During the Gen Z, there was absolutely no reason for the military, this Gazette notice that was done, I guess, by Duale or whoever who was there, to ensure that the military was deployed because there was nobody with guns. So, but we also need to look back and ask themselves as Kenyans, there was some naivety. As early as 2022, and I'm not surprised, it was always going to be, if you elect as president somebody who is by nature a tyrant, then you put yourself hostage to 3 scenarios. That ultimately, and this is a historical truism, a tyrant relies on lies, relies on money, and ultimately violence, which is institutionally comes in the form of the military. So you've seen the Gen Z, what happened in Kenya. The Gen Z, by the time when they were reaching there, they had called out the lies of the leader. So that, because now you would say you are just a common liar and nobody takes you seriously. These lies are still continuing, but now these lies, uongo mashinani, that is what is going on. Because all the educated people and people who are sophisticated, they know that all these promises, these are just lies and lies. Then the second issue was bribery, money. There is mass bribery of Kenyans through all these programs, as you know them. Now, if bribery fails, and it is likely to fail, because how many people in a population of almost 60 million will you successfully bribe to know that you'll get re-elected? The final issue is going to be violence through the military, so that the militarization of the state is directly tied up to 2 things. You have a tyrant as president, and number 2, he's facing a re-election. A re-election that by the day, you can see the formula for this re-election, 50+1. It is almost not there. Because even if you are to do a credible poll as a media station, and you ask in how many constituency, particularly the big ones with a lot of populations, can you say that 3 out of 7 people say that we are going to re-elect a president? I believe he knows that. He has a scientific mind to some extent for his own self-preservation. I believe he keeps doing the polls, and he's aware about all these things that we are talking about, so that we are facing a dire situation. But you see now also Kenyans are prepared, that they are prepared in advance, that somebody is likely to resort more to violence and the military to try to keep himself in power. Unfortunately, is that never ends up well. Because when you use the military too early, he used it in the 2nd year of his rule, people now get prepared. And everybody now, because now individual decisions must be made by the military rulers, the police and everybody else, because you must get a critical number of players willing to betray their country on behalf of a dictator for even this militarization to work. So I see dark days ahead. But these were predictable, I keep saying that, from 2022. People were simply reckless to say that anybody can be president and you expect him to rule under the Constitution. I never expected that. And that to me was the biggest quarrel with this. Nothing else, by the way.
Right. As we continue examining what's happening in the region, there's another trend where Kenyans may not escape blame, that a lot of what we do here is copied or replicated across the border. What happened here with the post-election violence is more or less what we're seeing. And the solutions that we went for is probably what Tanzanians are going for as well. We hear now talks that Samia Suluhu Hassan is ready for dialogue with the opposition there. There's probably a formation, and very quickly within days, and you look at the papers today from Tanzania, they're already talking about confession, forgiveness, and healing. Days. They're not talking even about justice. They're not talking about calling people to account. They're talking about just moving on. Don't you think that that is also something that even Kenya is part of? That we developed a solution, and we've seen it even now, where leaders coalesce together after everything erupts, and Tanzania and Uganda will just copy the same?
Well, Kenya has been in the lead for a number of things. One, we have a very robust population, well-educated, hardworking, and therefore some of the ideas that we design or we innovate are likely to be copied elsewhere. Remember, the issue of Grand Coalition was not only promoted in Kenya, it went all the way to Zimbabwe, and the other day, even in South Africa, despite the fact that ANC won handsomely, they had to co-opt some of the players, some of them very strange bedfellows, like the regime, the party that represents the Boers in South Africa. It is something that we must accept, that we have innovative people. At times our limitation is not the people, it is the leaders who they themselves arrogate to themselves high pedestal and believe that they know everything else under what they call themselves their scientists of the century. But what is worrying me is that if I was to advise Suluhu Hassan, and who am I, is to tell her, spend the rest of your term trying to give Tanzanians a more progressive constitution, because after all, she does not have any risk unless she's entertaining the idea that the first term she got it from an already existing arrangement and pretend that she can go for a third term. If she was to go for a third term, that will be a split of Tanzania in a way that Zanzibar will have to go their way, Tanganyika will have to go their way. Because the kind of relationship they have had in Tanzania has been a relationship of what is mine is ours. What is yours is yours. Because Zanzibar does exist as a state with its budget, with all its infrastructure, independent of Tanganyika. But whatever belongs to Tanganyika is shared between the two nations. And this is something I feel, and I said before, is a bit parasitic, if not subprophetic, because at the end of the day, the Tanzanian population, which is almost in 80%, because Zanzibar is almost akin to a small province within Tanzania. But they have been getting those privileges because Mwalimu Nyerere, I think, extended a lot of goodwill to his brother, the late Abeid Karume, after the formation of CCM from Afro Shirashi and TANU. But this is a situation that has been simmering all the time. At times it is Zanzibaris who are complaining, but now it is the Tanganyikans who are complaining about this kind of relationship. So if she wants to leave some kind of respect, heritage, and legacy, she must allow constitutional reforms in Tanzania. After all, she does not risk losing anything. That may be her own legacy, from a bad person to a good person, by leaving them a better constitution.
Okay. Kathy, if we may examine the kind of solutions that we have come up with to such problems in the Kenyan context and now in the Tanzanian context, what is missing there is a demand for justice. It is always, let's move on, let's heal and move on. And the people who are behind these killings are really brought to book, not in Kenya, and if it happens again, not in Tanzania. That is a weakness in itself.
A huge one. You see, Tanzania, Uganda can borrow a leaf from Kenya, as you say, because we have progressed quite a lot, especially when it comes to our constitution, and that's a good thing. But then I want to call it political bad manners. There's some political bad manners that they don't have to import from Kenya. And I'm talking about the handshakes that keep happening in Kenya, I think even regionally, where a politician decides to behave badly, the other one decides to unleash violence, the other one decides maybe to call for demonstration and stuff like that. And then after the bloodshed, the two people or the three people come together, shake hands and say, let's move on. You know, the unfortunate thing about this moving on is that it is the leaders, it's the 2 or 3 leaders that move on and not the masses. It leaves a bitter taste, it leaves a lot of pain to families and even to the victims. And we keep losing lives this way. And in this forgetting, in this assuming that things are okay and you can move on, you can go on with your life. Remember the other day, I think I mentioned this to you, Fred, handshakes are actually elitist. They do not benefit the people. They benefit a few individuals. So the East African region and even Kenya particularly, we need to move from politics of personality to politics of issues, because I mean, what the people are concerned about and what the people keep praising and what we are even talking about today as Kenyans is because the plight of the common of Mwananchi is not being addressed. People are talking about education, you know, which is almost collapsing. The health system that is almost collapsing. I mean, when you listen to the Tanzanian, the young people in Tanzania who came out to speak, and even someone like Bobby Wine, when he speaks, they're just talking about real issues that are biting the common person. But our leaders, I mean, and this has to stop. Whether it is regional handshakes, national handshakes, whatever you call them, they don't benefit the people. They are actually selfish moves.
The concern is that even the Kenyans who are complaining, those who've been abducted in Uganda, in Tanzania, chances of them receiving justice is almost nil. And the kind of route that Samia is taking, probably due to international pressure, now she's going for dialogue with the opposition. Of course, the voices will be pacified. This lack of justice, where does this leave us? That we know that families can continue burying their dead, but justice will never be served.
Of course, injustice always has a context in the sense that the constitution, the laws of the country must be in a state that permits the quest for justice to be realistic. In Tanzania, I don't think it is realistic. In Kenya, to some extent, we are still involved in courts with a lot of many struggles where you saw the recent attempt of President Ruto to copy Museveni and to drag civilian protesters into terrorist courts. By and large, that was reversed. It was unpopular. The DPP, I think, however close he is to the president, was finding it difficult. And it's a shame. You see, there are those things that you can process in the streets of Makueni and Machakos are not very easy for the DPP to prosecute in a court of law and to look like a decent or credible person. So where you have institutions, the quest for justice becomes a little bit easier. In Tanzania, the law is one of the impediments to any quest for justice. But justice, the second context of justice, is political. And I take you back to the year 2007. In the year 2007, what you had in Kenya is where you had a big problem with the presidential election. There were people resolved not to go to court. But for the other elections, which by and large had reflected the voting across the country, you had a number of election petitions being filed. That opportunity to say that you could go to court to address those electoral problems at the local level is one of the other political avenues for seeking justice. But politically, ultimately, if you say you have two sides, where are those two sides? Those two sides are supposed to be reflected in the composition of parliament. So that in a situation whereby you have completely rigged parliamentary elections, it means that the actual opposition is actually outside. In Tanzania, they have already started to charge so many people with treason. So that you rig election, then the leaders that you've just rigged out because their supporters and other Tanzanians have gone out to protest, the justice, you use it as a sword against the victims. So for Tanzania, the first thing that you must start, because the opposition in Kenya, let's start there. In Kenya, because ODM and other people, the parties of the day, were already in parliament. So what happened now is that it becomes easier at the executive level, because that is where usually you have this handshake, to say, let us have some sharing of executive power. Ultimately, politically, that worked to give us the 2010 constitution. This happy scenario that you had it in Kenya, you will not have it in Tanzania because their opposition, they are not in parliament at all, politically. They are outside. You have excluded people both from the institutions and both political institutions and the legal institutions. So the starting point in Tanzania, and I would agree with her, there is no legal or political basis for Tanzania to move on with this of Tanzania in the next 5 years and say that the Suluhu can be able to do this or the other. Because for that to happen, there must be a political basis. Therefore, the first thing in Tanzania is that the international community, because even African Union has said there was really no election. The first thing for electoral justice is part of justice, is to demand you must repeat elections in Tanzania and Suluhu everybody weigh on her and tell her, now that you have proved Tanzania, you can get 98% of the vote, can you repeat it? Where all of us now we can see, because if I run very fast, we can run one round and I say, if you don't believe I won, let's run another round. So in Tanzania, for Tanzania to move on at all, whether this year or any other year, it will be necessary that an election must take place. If it doesn't take place immediately, it is just to postpone a very big problem and serious instability in our region.
All right, Trinity of Terror, and the comparison is being made with Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Ion Antonescu, leaders that terrorized Europe back in the 1940s and earlier. This is almost 80 years later, and our leaders are now being compared to Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, and Antonescu. Very sad state of affairs there. Trinity of Terror, the front page of the Standard. On the front page of the Daily Nation, President Museveni casually admitting that, yes, we had those two Kenyans, and yeah, he chuckled when he said he had them in the fridge at some point. This is the state of the nation, ladies and gentlemen. Let's come back home and try and examine our politics. At least probably it will make us feel better. And sometime last week, the Jubilee Party held a very important meeting where the party leader, that's the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, made some pronouncements, which have caused ripples across the political scene. Let's watch that story about what President Uhuru Kenyatta said and examine that and see how that changes the political dynamics going forward. Yeah, we want to talk about Uhuru Kenyatta and what he said at the Jubilee Party meeting over the weekend. Uhuru warning over insults. All right, even as we continue looking for that story, let's continue examining our political situation right now. On the front page of the People Daily, they talk about the regions.
Yes.
And how now the tectonic plates appear to have shifted following, of course, the demise of the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga. And now the re-emergence of, or rather emergence of new leadership and the control of the regions. And it is interesting that we still talk about the regions. And Uhuru Kenyatta is one of those considered as a regional leader as well, despite the fact that he insists he's a national leader. Let's watch that story. Then
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta hit the ground running to campaign for Jubilee Deputy Leader Fred Matiang'i's presidential bid in the populous Mount Kenya region during a meeting of grassroots leaders drawn from Murang'a County. In a bid to consolidate unity in the Mount Kenya region behind Matiang'i and avert a fallout in the United Opposition Alliance, Kenyatta issued a strong warning to Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni and other party members to stop insulting former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua or quit the party.
Nanie Kioni Secretary General nigukwira kule nie maundu macio ma hindi ciothe guthoma mutandao andu ne ndioi na aroiga arugamirire Jubilee mararu Gachagua na ku araru more ongi ni ndikwenda maundu macio ma gikodi
Kenyatta's olive branch to Gachagua came weeks after Kioni accused the former DP of being President William Ruto's mole in the opposition, alleging that Gachagua had tried to coerce Matiang'i to drop his presidential bid.
Atongoria mena uhuru wa kurugama na kiama kiria mekwenda na mathure mutongoria uria mekwe nie ndikwenda na uria nie ngaigua nie athie na maundu ma kurumana muira riu akahinda gaka anyitiriire muira heane kuri aria angi mathie na mbere nie uria nguona agika mitugo iyo nie ndiko hesitate kuga inje out teenager.
The meeting, which marked Matiang'i's first formal campaign tour to market his bid in the Mount Kenya region, saw him accept his nomination by the Jubilee Party, pledging to work with all leaders across the political divide.
I served under President Kenyatta in Jubilee for 10 years, implemented the policies of Jubilee for 10 years. I believe in President Uhuru Kenyatta. I totally support him, and I totally believe in his solid leadership and vision for our country. So, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be your deputy party leader. I will work with all of you.
We are working with others in the united opposition. Na tutafanya kazi kwa heshima. We are part of them. We are part of that arrangement. And we will work with respect of each other.
Kenyatta also came to the defense of the youth, criticizing the Ruto administration for muzzling their voices on how they want to be governed.
Sio wewe kuja kuambia ati itakuwa hivi. Wenyewe wanajua Kenya ile wanataka.
Apart from selling Matiang'i's presidential candidature in the Mount Kenya region, this is the first time the former president is mentioning DCP party leader Rigathi Gachagua, calling for unity in the Mount Kenya region and to avert a fallout in the United Opposition Alliance. Apul Kamau, TV47 in Murang'a County.
Yes, and as Apollo Kamau put it, it was the very first time that the former president mentioned the DCP party leader by name and giving a very telling, making a very telling pronouncement, which definitely will carry weight. And when Akiru, allow me to ask Kathy Rungu this question before I come to you, because we've seen you there on the front row. So you were very close to this. Yes, the former president spoke in vernacular, interesting as well. But you've also been one of those people who've been very critical on this panel of the DCP party leader. And are we misreading what Uhuru Kenyatta said, or is it, yes, a straight warning to people like you that, yes, this is the direction we're taking and you better tune up?
You know, my party leader decided to, to actually, with the riot, calling us to order and telling us that he doesn't want us to continue conducting our business as we had conducted before. As you know, Uhuru Kenyatta, for the last, I think, 2-3 months, has continued to speak as a leader. He has come out strongly as a symbol of unity, especially if you remember even the reception he got at Nyayo Stadium during Baba's, funeral service, and even when we went to Bondo. And his call is that we all behave better. He was not addressing a specific person. He was addressing all of us, especially members of the Jubilee Party. I know you mentioned that I've been very critical of the DCP party leader. I want to say categorically that it is because of our personal, what I would call personal political differences, and it has got nothing, totally nothing to do with Jubilee. Now, coming back home, why the president had come to Murang'a, that's not the only, the first and the last meeting that he's going to conduct. There's an intention, there's a plan to do grassroots meetings in all counties, not just the Mount Kenya counties, but across the country. And this is something that he promised us to do during our NDC as a way of popularizing the party, as a way of reminding our members that they need to come back to the party, because UDA, for example, was born out of Jubilee, because most of the members who are in UDA, even from the region, were originally members of Jubilee. Most of the members that are in DCP by choice were initially members of the Jubilee Party. And the president has said everybody has a right to be in whatever party they choose to be in. So we are going to follow what the party leader has said. And since he's the party leader, and he has decided to lead us that way, that unity of purpose is important in the united opposition, that we need to work as a team, and everybody needs to be included for this purpose. Now, we hope to see the other side reciprocate. We hope to see the other side do the same, because immediately our party leader came out and spoke so strongly warning us and telling us to stop insults and to stop even bashing Gachagua, as it was the case before. We saw members from the DCP party disparage us and even say, okay, I mean, you, the members of Jubilee Party and your party leader, if you're serious, why don't you dissolve Jubilee and join DCP, you know? So really, we are just wondering whether it will be reciprocated.
By the former president, does it mean that now it's official that Jubilee is working, the whole party, with the united opposition?
Yes, Jubilee is working with the united opposition, and what we have done is that we have appointed our deputy party leader, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, to sit with other principals from the united opposition and negotiate from there, and we cannot now speak for him. So it is him as a deputy party leader to negotiate. So he's going to sit on the same table with Rigathi Gachagua, he's going to sit on the same table with Kalonzo Musyoka, he's going to sit with Martha Karua, he's going to sit with all the other principals, including Eugene Wamalwa, and now they forge forward. They come up with a way forward and decide on what they need to decide as principles of the united opposition.
Yet the suspicion, Bonakirwa, within even the united opposition, now that we are to include officially Jubilee in it, is that it's not waning. And on the front page of Taifa Leo, wanasema mimi tu ndio kusema mlimani, Gachagua ashauri wakazi wa mlima kumsikiliza yeye tu, akidai vyama vingine vyote isipokuwa DCP ni wheelbarrow. This suspicion has been there for a while, that whatever Jubilee is doing is simply an extension of UDA and Kenya Kwanza. And the perception that the former president has been wishy-washy in joining the official opposition. Do you think this is about to end anytime soon, given that rather weighty pronouncement by the...
Yeah, first of all, allow me to congratulate the president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, for making that magnanimous move. As you know, for the last 3 months, he's been making very interesting moves in terms of his narrative, both at the funeral and in many other funerals that he has attended and other meetings that he has attended, including the one in Embu, where there was some ordaining of a bishop of Embu. Allow me also to say that Jubilee has been with us, because I can say so authoritatively. For the last 6 months, we've been working together on certain information, documentation, and gathering of data. We've had 2 members of the Jubilee Party attending our meetings, of which I'm the chair. And we've not had any problem at all. It's only that there has been altercations among supporters of Jubilee and DCP, having the fact that they are siblings rivalries anywhere in the world. But also to confirm that Fred Matiang'i has been with the other principals in various meetings that I've attended. And it is not a new phenomenon. He's been with them. And of course, when people who are competing for the same trophy sit together, each person tries to jostle their positions to certain comparative advantage. It should also be remembered that President Kenyatta possibly has also more information about the need for the Mount Kenya region to be united, given the fact that close to 26% of all the votes cast in Kenya come from that particular region. And if you are talking of 26%, you just need somebody else to bring 25%, and you have the trophy 50% plus 1 vote. And therefore, fragmentation of Mount Kenya region will not be in the interest of the united opposition. It will be in the interest of the current regime to make sure that that region is divided and even have their own presidential candidate away from the rest of the leadership. I know my good friend and lawyer believes that even fragmentation is a sure way of sending Kasongo home. For me, I belong to the other school, that at times there is what we call in politics bandwagon effect, that when people galvanize around certain ideas, certain wishes, even those who are on the sidelines will be carried by the bandwagon effect. Remember, if a lorry passes next to you, a lot of sand and soil will just be hitting you as the lorry moves on. Those are the people who are the remnants who are doubting whether this is going to be true or not. But the bandwagon effect, for me, is a finality to Kasongo. Let's not have repeat elections in Kenya. It's too expensive and it's unnecessary.
But the kind of discomfort that portends for the united opposition is rather visible, that it's not a very comfortable union. Even them sitting around a table for the next 20 months just to sustain the unity of that coalition is not going to be easy. You can already see the strain even after that declaration by the former president.
Yes, it is true. And two things. I also congratulate the former president for coming out strongly. First of all, to warn that it is unhealthy to have leaders of Jubilee. We were actually in court on Friday on this case of who is the majority. Is it Kenya Kwanza or Azimio? And I remember my friend Deg Wajiro, because he had gone to Kisumu, to Bondo. He was not able to be there. He is a lawyer for Jubilee for purposes of that case. So I held his brief on behalf of Jubilee. And the thing is that I am associated with Jubilee in the past. I am also have some associations with the Rigathi Gachagua more than DCP, because I am not a member of any party as of now. But what now I can be able to say, what I'm sure about, is that the one movement that every person who do not want to see the re-election of William Ruto belongs to is a one-term movement. The clear, recognizable leader of the one-term movement is Rigathi Gachagua. Therefore, it would become completely untenable to have a situations whereby in Mount Kenya or elsewhere, people are fighting the leaders of the one-term movement more than they are fighting, as it were, the re-elections of.
And as you keep saying that he's a leader of the one-term movement, I'm seeing Kathy get very uncomfortable.
It's okay.
It is that discomfort that I'm talking about.
It doesn't matter. It's a matter, it's obvious, and it's the media itself that says, when he was away, for example, politically on the ground, all these issues, apart from coining the issue of the one-term movement, on the ground, the person who galvanizes the most support under the umbrella of the one-term movement remains himself. These are facts that you cannot be able to run away from, however much you contest them. But before we run away from the point, the issue would be, to say you are the political leader of the one-term movement does not make you the presidential candidate. I believe that is where people would get jitters about, isn't it? But the point I'm making is this, that if you are in the one-term movement, but we see you speak more against Gachagua than against William Ruto, then your credibility will have to be doubted. And unfortunately, that has been the case from, Mr. Kioni is a personal friend of mine, okay? But it has been the case that that is what he has been doing. And therefore, that's why the presidents, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, chiding publicly of Kioni that go easy on Gachagua and let us focus on the issues. It is timely and it was wise. Number two, but the most important thing that caught me there is when he agreed with the rest of us that the leadership of Central Kenya, whether from Mount Kenya region or the larger diaspora zones, has been extremely weak and low caliber. And he also said we need really to get into positions people with some credibility and capacity. That was also important. But finally now, to add up now to that issue, is that politically what does it portend? Politically what it portends is that the sibling rivalry between DCP and Jubilee is inevitable. And why will it be inevitable? And a major concern is this, that because former President Uhuru Kenyatta remains the leader and politically active, and you can see Kenya Kwanza are starting to get some concerns about it, it is because we've also had a vacuum in terms of statesmanship. The President William Ruto, unfortunately, he's a very polarizing leader. a leader who talks about government and opposition. And opposition is not cast in flattering terms. It is cast like being a member of the opposition is like you are some kind of a plague, okay? Leprosy. And this is not advisable, because now you would find that in a country, there would be moments like, and that's why they say the president is the head of state. As head of state, which he has completely been unable to do, to divest himself from extreme partisanship, you would need a leader who can stand above everybody else for purposes of national solidarity. And that is why you have been seeing like Kenyans have been increasingly been looking upon President Uhuru Kenyatta to play that role. And remember, constitutionally, the people decides who is in the opposition and who is not. Now, people like Rigathi Gachagua, who are elected to govern with, he decided to sponsor an impeachment motion to remove him, okay? With the consequence, now you bring the opposition and you say like people who are supposed to be in the oppositions are part of government, so that it is no longer government in accordance with the constitution through election results, but a government personally built on the political convenience of the president of the day. That leaves a serious constitutional vacuum that you end up politically translating. We want Uhuru Kenyatta to give us more directions. The final point to tie up with what Kipruto Rapkirwa was saying, how will that now play out in the politics of the united opposition? I do not see DCP and Jubilee becoming very great friends as we move forward. Of course, insult should not be there. And I welcome, personally, I don't want us to have a situations whereby there is a party that looks like ODM in Mount Kenya region. I want there to be multi-party democracy in central Kenya. You do not have also a situation whereby, like you see in the areas of Kipruto or Rapkirwa, where Ruto gets all the seats. That should not be happening in modern Kenya, because that is how you ensure that you have low caliber leadership. People should be, if DCP has a good candidate, let that candidate be elected. If that good candidate comes from Jubilee, I have zero problem with that candidate coming from Jubilee. Finally, about the presidential vote that he's talking about, I do not see a scenario, I am winding up quickly on that, where, because the probability of a runoff election in my analysis is 80%, that the next election will be settled through a runoff. Probably someday you need to call us to discuss that issue alone, so that we can explain it to the Kenyan people. All right. If that be the case, if Matiang'i gets traction through Uhuru Kenyatta, who seems to be popular across the country, then chances are that Jubilee having Matiang'i as a presidential candidate out of the united opposition is very high. And Catherine would tell you when she's not on stage that that is a very strong possibility.
All right. But the discussions within the united opposition about possible positions and how they're organizing themselves have been on the headlines over the past few days. One of the things that has come out and probably would cause a lot of problems is an apparent demand for 50% of the government. As we make our final comments, because we're heading to the close, if we consider that, and it's one of the cartoons, it's on one of the cartoons, I think the cartoon on the Star today, that demand from Katenusu 50% by one of those, and they say it's a DCP party leader. Then we see him on the front page of the Taifa Leo saying, Mimi tu ndio kusema mlimani. What does that portend? Is this pure propaganda meant to disintegrate the united opposition, or could there be some truth to it? And is it workable with such demands?
First of all, that issue has not been at the table. What we are still working on are the mechanics of dealing with issues of the constituencies, issues of the wards, especially in certain areas where there is some kind of cosmopolitan constituencies. For example, to a certain limited extent, a county like mine, if we are not properly geared towards ensuring we have only one candidate from the official opposition or the united opposition, we are likely to lose any of the seats.
That's Trans Nzoia.
Trans Nzoia. And to a certain limited extent, also Nakuru. Nakuru is also a mixed grill, where if we have only one candidate, we don't have DCP and Jubilee fielding in the same county, we are likely to find that UDA might prevail or Kenya Kwanza may prevail. So the issue of sharing, I think, is the height of imagination on the part of the Kenya Kwanza propaganda machine. We've not talked about how to share resources, how to share positions, how to share any of those issues other than ensuring that we have one candidate in certain areas. But in Mount Kenya region, not the diaspora of Mount Kenya, let's say Murang'a, Kiambu, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Embu, and even Meru, it is likely that you can have even two parties and the best candidate will emerge as a winner, whether it is Jubilee or DCP, if it is properly done in a way that we don't have, because Kenya Kwanza can never garner even 15% of the votes in the counties that I've just mentioned, if the current survey is anything to go by.
Yes, but it's not beyond imagination that everyone should be thinking about, okay, how will we all fit in this once we get power? And those discussions about who get where, because there are quite a number of leaders who have a national appeal there. Definitely those conversations may have started at this point. Do you believe that it's pure propaganda, as Waziri Kirwa says?
No, with all due respect to my senior, Kipruto Arap Kirwa Mheshimiwa, what I know is that for sure it's not beyond Rigathi Gachagua. And I say this from experience. And we have seen the members of the DCP party, specifically the party leader, go around and say that he's the keeper. You know, he's like the the prefect in the united opposition. I think what needs to happen moving forward, and this is where we need the guidance of elders like Waziri Kirwa here, is to ask everybody now to tone down. At least my party leader has cracked the whip, and he has said we all need to behave better. Ourselves from the Jubilee Party, we have actually decided to heed to that call. I personally will heed to that call. And I think moving forward, none of us should behave as if they are above the law. And I'm not saying about any written laws. I'm talking about just these things that they keep agreeing, because Waziri Kirwa sits at a different level. I sit at a different level. We need to come on board with clean hands. You know, let everybody feel that they are part and parcel of the united opposition. Bullying each other, pushing and elbowing other people is not helping. It's not helping. And I believe from the words of His Excellency Uhuru, he just spoke on Friday. We are here 2 days after he made that statement. I actually believe that everybody is going to toe the line, at least because the person who spoke to us is the only father we have, you know, in the united opposition. We all look up to him as a statesman and as a symbol of unity.
Right. This issue about shareholding was a big hot potato during the impeachment process. Reintroducing it at this time could have serious effects as well. Where do you think it's coming from?
I would agree with Kipruto Arap Kirwa that no such demand has actually been made, and it is only regrettable when NIS is using 1984 propaganda to try to push those narratives and people are buying it. You feel sorry for anybody buying such kind of a propaganda. It's completely propaganda, and I believe, and I am close to the party lawyers of DCP, that is not their kind of thinking. They are all aware of the fact that this so-called 50% of government, you had it in 2002, and where now they floated the idea. Institutionally, when you get the president with the constitutional power to say, I'm going to elect so-and-so as a minister, it is not enforceable. So there is no lawyer with any capacity at all who would be able to advise on insanity of that kind of nature, that somebody gets elected as president and he will give you 50% of government. If any lawyer doing that is clearly not a lawyer by any kind of description. So that will definitely not be there. You can take it from me, I'm aware of that. Number two, the more realistic thing would be that specific legal positions that exist is what people are going to go for. But in the meantime, there's going to be all this kind of propaganda.
Has that discussion begun?
No, I don't think it has begun in any serious way, because before you have settled on the principles, in fact, I believe the more important statement made by Rigathi Gachagua was when he said in a recent interview, this issue will be, the waters are going to be settled around December 2026. He said it by his own mouth, okay? Let us see where we shall be. Let us gauge each other's strength. It is by that time, and I believe we shall all be here, that we shall know how much Jubilee has gained traction on the ground. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta said, we have a long journey to travel. You need to teach Matiang'i to educate him politically to get there. If he gets traction and is not favored, then the chances that he could easily vie on his own in 2027 are high. And finally, I am against boardroom democracy. We have the Gen Z, who as a constituency may be between 5 to 10 million in the year 2027. Now, in all these discussions, you do not hear anybody say this will be the representative of the Gen Z, okay? Now, whatever deals are going to be struck, even if it is in December 2026, as Rigathi Gachagua says, I believe it will be the legacy politicians and everybody who is generally Gen X who will be in that meeting and to decide we are taking this or the other. Right. But a big constituency will not be party to that discussion. So how this will actually turn out and think that a deal between legacy politicians will be binding on everybody else, I don't see that happening. And because this is the trend we are going, that's why I'm absolutely convinced that such a deal amongst legacy politicians will not be respected definitely by the Gen Z, and that is why I am sure there will be a runoff election. And to say there will be a runoff election doesn't mean I don't believe in a united opposition. It will only mean that the candidate for the united opposition is likely to be in the runoff.
Thank you so much.
I think, Fred, I want to add something.
Out of time.
Okay.
Maybe 15 seconds only if you're able.
Yeah, I just want to support what my senior here, Wakili, has said. And today I feel like shaking his hand. He says that boardroom politics or boardroom kind of deals that are struck, what those boardroom deals do, they leave out women and they leave out young people. So we also need to be very careful as we craft this moving forward.
Fred, they seem to be saying so and looking at me. As if I'm In fact, the role of women and Gen Z is prominent. Okay. They move all the way to the summit.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Kipruto, veteran politician, served as Minister for Agriculture in the Kibaki One administration and also as MP for Cherangani for 4 terms. Kathy Rungu, a governance expert, and Kibe Mungai, advocate of the High Court. Our panelists this morning, let's take a look at the big headlines. Of course, Kenyan politics making headlines and what President Uhuru Kenyatta said and mentioning Rigathi Gachagua by name are still causing ripples. But the big headlines today on the Daily Nation: abductions, how Museveni caved in. Hiyo maswala ya fridge, still big discussion in Kenya. On the Star today, multiple fees to hurt Kenya's tourism appeal. As always, fresh, independent, different. They go with matters tourism. On the front page of Taifa Leo, mimi tu ndio kusema mlimani, nani anasema hivyo, Rigathi Gachagua. People Daily, regional shifts ahead of the 2027 race. More or less what we've discussed. But the Standard, another screaming one, and I love this one. Trinity of terror, with all the 3 presidents of the East African region dressed in military fatigues. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the state, not just of the nation, but of this region of East Africa. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. Good morning.